Just to clear things up on my first post, so I don't have to repeat these again here. My ex-husband is alive. When I said I lost my husband and my job, people thought he died. He cheated and I worked for him. So when we separated, I lost my husband and my job. No one died. Max and I have never slept together. The father of the child is a one-night stand, which Mary knows, and she said she was supportive of me tracking him down. I let Max stay with me because his family are in another country. His friends have turned on him, and his only other option was a shelter. He could not afford a hotel because without Max and I there, Mary had to pay for professional childcare, among other things. So if Max got a hotel, Mary would not have been able to pay for everything she needed for herself and Maggie. Shortly after my first post, I told Max he had to go home. He didn't want to involve police before this, but I told him that if nothing else, doing this would get him access to Maggie. So when he went to the station and someone escorted him inside, Mary was at work, so the new nanny let them in. Mary threw a fit that night, but Max stayed put. Mary then came to my place, saying I need to let her stay there to make up for ruining her marriage. I told her that was BS, but let her stay. She went home the next day and said Max would be sleeping in the office until the DNA results came in. I called around a few clinics as our original appointment was booked for the 16th November and found somewhere that could do the test sooner. But it would cost a lot more and require some traveling. I told Max, who booked it because he just wanted the test done ASAP. Had the test, got the results, and to the surprise of absolutely ducking no one, Max is not the father of my child. Mary said that this didn't prove we weren't sleeping together, just that Max didn't impregnate me. At that point, I gave up, and Max said he was moving out and starting a divorce, which she then said was further proof that he wanted to leave her to be with me, so Max and I can play house, and I can cook and clean and take care of the kids and be a better wife than she can. And that's when everything clicked. We don't know if this is postpartum or what, but it's clearly a mental health thing, linked to her going back to work and me helping them out at home and being friends with Max. Max wants to make things work, and so does Mary, so hopefully counseling and therapy help. I am taking a step back because while I love Maggie and Max is still my best friend, I don't want to be around Mary right now. She said some stuff to me that I didn't appreciate and hasn't apologized, and I'm pregnant and stressed and don't really need that energy in my life. So I think that maybe some space is needed. Edit. I will be using the original appointment on the 15th to test the guy I believe is the father. I know I asked last time about how we get things back to normal, and I'd like to repeat that question here. How do we get things back to normal? You are in this mess because every single person around Mary is a complete doormat. Your sister accuses you of getting pregnant by her husband, and you want to play nice? Doormat. Your sister kicks her husband out of the house and doesn't let him see his kids, and he doesn't fight it. That's not even legal. Doormat. Your sister demands pretermal paternity test, an inherently risky procedure, assuming non-NIPP, for your unborn child, and you agree just to appease her? Good to know your sister's BS matters more than your child. Doormat. Your sister says the test results don't prove anything, and you just gave up. Doormat. Your sister shows up at your house, blames you for ruining her marriage, demands to stay at your place, and you let her. Doormat. Someone needs to put their damn foot down for once in your sister's life and not let her bully every single situation. Grow a spine and treat your sister like the brat she is. I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer earlier in the year. Since then, it has been an all-consuming battle. I felt like every inch of my being was reacting to this cancer. I gained over 50 pounds. My hair completely fell out with chemo, and I would throw up all the time. If I wasn't in immediate pain, I was depressed and didn't want to drag myself to a shower. The first time my husband saw clumps of my hair falling out, I was brushing it. He became very bitter. He changed from the guy who posted on Facebook urging family and friends to keep me in their thoughts, who said he was going to help me fight it together, to someone distant and angry. He'd try to initiate S, but the scent of his cologne was enough to make me nauseous. When I'd express that, he'd turn sharply away. He'd wake me up to tell me I should wash myself, and I think he complained to our kids that he does everything and isn't appreciated for his efforts. We ended up going to therapy, and afterwards, he said he'd stop resenting me for the lack of S attraction if I let him outsource that part of the relationship. He makes good money and said he'd get a college student and it would never mean anything to him. That he'd compensate her and she would just be a S toy. I used to contribute a lot through my job as a programmer, But now I'm not working. I was afraid that if we divorced, I wouldn't be able to afford my cancer treatments, so I told him we could talk about another girl, but cried myself to sleep. My twin daughters, 22, are in college, and my son, 21, wants to go to school after taking a few gap years. He's currently living at home. I thought that my job as a mother and wife was to toughen it up for the sake of the marriage and family, so I sucked it up and let him go find someone. This week, he told me he found a 21-year-old, and it became real. I've been crying myself to sleep and feel even worse physically. I ended up reading texts from her to him, and he was saying to her that she should bring her resume and schoolwork to the hotel, and he'd help her with her econ homework. At that moment, I nearly threw up because I realized that she was younger than all my kids, and that means that my 43-year-old husband could have changed her diapers. And now he's acting like a parental figure to a girl he wants to have S with. I could never imagine sleeping with someone my kids' age because I'd see my kids in them. I confronted him, and he said just because he saw a kid in her, that S isn't connected to that perception. He got mad and said I wasn't giving him S, and how was he supposed to stay in a marriage like that? He knows I'd sleep with him if I could. I don't know what to do now. My 21-year-old son can see the tension in the house, and my husband and I used to not fight very much. But it seems that he's threatening divorce. What do I do? I feel like either action would just make my life a misery, make my kids unhappy. I hate myself for getting cancer and know I'll never physically be the same again. I'll never be the 24-year-old young mom who married her boyfriend and father of her kids again. I just thought that this would be forever. How do I manage this situation so that at least my kids get out with little to no effect on their well-being? Once you get better, leave him. People show their true colors when faced with difficult situations. You shouldn't be mad at yourself for anything. This is not your fault. This completely lies with him. Also, your kids are adults now. They're old enough to know what's going on. Plus, I'm sure you raised them to be responsible adults. Give them all the information and proof, and let them decide what to do with it. The truth will come out eventually, and they might not appreciate having information withheld from them, or the father might lie and give them false information. I think it's best to tell them. Me, 33 female. I'll go by Sarah. And fiance, 30 male. We'll call him John for point of the post. Started seeing each other last year. We've known each other for a few years, and when we first met, it was through a group of friends and while we were both in other relationships. Both of us had really bad breakups, but remained friends. At some point in time, we decided to hang out, just the two of us, and turned into one of the best relationships we have ever been in. When we first started dating, he was constantly harassed by his ex, 30 female, let's call her Alice, who he had been in a long-term relationship with. They broke up because she had cheated on him and refused to leave the place they lived, his parents' house. It got so bad that they had to have her evicted. There's signed paperwork, and she signed an agreement that when she left, she had to take everything she wanted then, because otherwise, everything she left was counted as abandoned property. When she left, John made sure she got an apartment and helped her out with the deposit. He also co-signed a car loan for her to make sure she had a reliable vehicle to get around in. She took some stuff, but not everything, and left the dogs with John. About a year and a half after they split was when John and I started dating. John was trying to set up times to deliver Alice's stuff to her, or for her to come pick it up. Alice would always blow this off because something always came up. It got to such a point where John would receive calls and texts at all hours of the night from Alice about all sorts of things, but never about setting up times to come get things. About 3 months into our relationship, I told John it had to stop. So I texted Alice to tell her we were going to set up one final time for her to receive anything, that she were to make a list of whatever it was she wanted back, and that we would negotiate an agreement to deliver whatever we agreed on. I gave her 2 weeks to come up with a list, and that when the list was submitted, that we would deliver things within 30 days of submittal on a date that worked for all parties involved. John added in that he didn't want her calling or texting anymore. That the only communication he wanted was about the upcoming exchange and then nothing more. We hear nothing out of her, nothing at all. The date for the list comes and goes without a single word. We try to text her and get nothing back. So we carry on with life. I start boxing up things John said he didn't want or things he knew were directly hers. Things like clothes, shoes, pictures, etc. And we put them in storage. About a month after the date we set and moved her things out, John and I moved in together. 2 weeks after I moved in, Alice starts calling and texting again. She's crying about how she misses him and she still loves him, to which he tells her to stop calling. She starts threatening him and goes as far as to text my ex, 30 male, we will call him Greg, knowing I have a restraining order against him. At that point, I suggested that John go completely no contact from Alice and that I felt unsafe. John agreed, and we did. 2 days later, I leave for work at 6:30 in the morning, and she shows up at John's door 10 minutes after I leave. She was drunk and refused to leave. John calls me panicking, but I told him I can't leave work to deal with this, that he needs to call the cops and force her to leave. John decides to throw a few boxes of her things in the yard, and she collects them and leaves. After work, I am still so upset about this, I call Alex and her boyfriend, 30 male, going to call him Devin, answers the phone. I tell him what's been going on, and he flips out. Alice has been telling Devin that she's been at work, but she was over at John's. I told him about how she tells John they broke up and etc., to which he hangs up the phone. She calls back a few hours later and asks if all of us could work together one last time and just get her clothes and simple things. We agree. We set a time. Once again, she blows us off. Alice blames me for ruining her relationship with Devin. I load up my car and tell her I'll drop off right now. She agrees, and I bring her 4 carloads of things to her. She starts crying about how she has nowhere to put it all, and I ignore it. I continue dropping things off in the driveway. I bring her 3 more and decide I'm done helping. I tell her I don't want to hear from her ever again. Since then, both John and I have blocked her and ignored any sort of communication attempts. We were told to get a restraining order, but I'm scared of the reaction it's going to get. I already got rid of everything else, and I just want to move on. Today, though, she calls from a new number, saying she's taking me to court over her stuff. John's worried he's going to lose his dogs because they did share them for most of their 9-year relationship. Both are registered to him, and all vet paperwork is too. She's claiming I kept her from getting her things, but I didn't. She didn't meet the agreement, and I gave up trying. What should I be doing to handle this appropriately? Should I just get the restraining order and try to ignore it, or should I be actively telling her to leave me alone? If she sues me and John, should John countersue for the car he co-signed on? I know you're not looking for this type of advice, but it sounds like John needs to grow some balls over his ex. He is leaning way too much on you. Seems like every time Alice interacts with him, he makes you the bad guy. It would be a good idea to have a conversation with him about setting boundaries and being more stern with her as well. I was concerned even about the breakup. He helped her find a place and everything. That wasn't his responsibility to do that. But it is to set boundaries and stick to them. It really sounds like you're taking on all the burden here, and this doesn't have anything to do with you. When I was around 8 or 9, it came out that my mom was having an affair with some guy that would come into town for business every few weeks or so. How they met is still a mystery to me, as my mom has never gone into details about what happened. What I do know is my dad figured it out because the timeline just didn't add up. This guy ghosted my mom when he found out she was pregnant, and it turned out he was wanted for tax evasion. So he's in prison for money laundering, scam, tax. My mom and dad wanted to save their marriage, and were going to put the baby into the system. My aunt stepped in and took him off my mom's hands. Things were fine for a while before my aunt moved to New York. I haven't seen or heard from her since. She and my mom apparently had a major fight. Every second Christmas, my grandparents would fly out to spend with her. And every birthday for my half-brother, they'd fly out to spend with her there. We never spent holidays with my aunt. She always stayed in New York City and never paid us much mind. My grandparents died very close to each other this year, one of old age and the other of cancer. They've left everything to my aunt, and she's in the process of selling the house. Well, they've left it to my half-brother to be more exact. They gave me and my sister some money, but they left everything to my aunt to help my half-brother. My mom wants to sue my aunt because she claims my aunt is rich enough from her job. And now we have this issue of my mom wanting to sue my aunt for the inheritance. She wants to go see a lawyer on Monday, but I can't talk her down from how bad of an idea this is. So it was easy to give up her own child, but it's surprisingly difficult to let him have his rightful inheritance. She's a piece of work. Maybe she needs to hear from an attorney that she has no grounds to sue. It is likely she is in denial about why they may have cut her out.